Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming back. Um, Watching the world news, of course, and Canada's impact on it, if we have any. But it's an interesting thing what's happening right now. Canada talks about itself as being a nation that has rule of law. I'm here to announce that we do not have rule of law. This is a fascist country. I know that not just from my own experience, but we get to watch it now. People who were appointed as our judges, all of them are appointed. Nobody got elected. Nobody speaks to the public. No judge in Canada has ever answered a question about their integrity, their background, their education by anyone from the public. It is not permitted in this country. Canada has banned all these things. That's why I'm saying it's fascist. Canada has also, under Jean Chrétien, the former Prime Minister from Quebec, who studied under Napoleonic Code, he doesn't know what English common law is. He didn't study it. None of the prime ministers did from Quebec because they don't have English common law. They have Napoleonic Code, which are the laws of a dictator. I think this is why Canada has moved to a dictatorship, which it clearly is. Our new prime minister, Justin Trudeau, he beats up a woman in Parliament. He's groping them at an open-door festival of music. He refuses to apologize. He refuses to remove himself from the cabinet while there's an investigation going on from an allegation made against him. In fact, the woman that made this allegation of groping, she's a journalist, which means now, of course, in Canada, we reward journalists, or the government does, by giving them an appointment to the Senate, another unelected body, where people who are appointed to the Senate answer no questions to anyone. If you have a question about their integrity or their background, you are not going to be heard, and they are not going to respond. We have had judicial problems here where members of the Senate are caught stealing money. They end up in court. The judge, who is also appointed by the government, makes sure that they walk away scot-free, and they even laugh about it. That's how bad it is in Canada now, our judicial system. A guy named Mike Duffy, clearly a criminal. He was absolved of all wrongdoing. The judge said this is when they did all the criminal procedure that happened. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who couldn't find their ass with both hands, presented their case. They thought they had it down pat. This man is guilty and must pay the price. Well, the judge saw it completely differently. The judge said, in fact, well, I don't agree with everything that Mr. Duffy has done, but on the whole, it's okay, it's all right. So then the Royal Canadian Mounted Police were going to prosecute another one. This is a woman this time, and she was formerly a journalist. Mike Duffy was also formerly a journalist. You'll find most of our Senate unelected people were journalists before. Canada likes to reward journalists because, you know, politicians like journalists to write good things about them. And if you write good things about the politicians, you get to go to the Senate. This woman that was groped by Justin Trudeau, she's not going to the Senate. Justin Trudeau will make sure she stays in the Bush League if she can even find another job, because that's how politicians treat people who are critical of their activities, especially if they're criminal activities. Anyway, on we go. Pamela Wallin is the next one up. She is supposed to be charged. She was charged, actually, and the RCMP, now this is interesting because criminal charges in Canada cannot be withdrawn. They have to be heard. But the judge the judge warned the Royal Canadian Mounted Police that if they bring a charge against Pamela Wallin, he will put the RCMP in jail. So there you go. Politicians reward lawyers to become judges, and judges do what the politicians tell them to do. That is a wonderful fascist country. Pierre Elliott Trudeau, the father of Justin Trudeau, in 1981 wrote our Constitution and changed all the laws. He made his own courtroom. He made all the rules for that courtroom. And as my lawyer friend, I have a lawyer friend, he said the only reason that court exists, it's called the Federal Court of Canada, is to protect the government of Canada from the people of Canada. And that is the basis of Napoleonic Code. That is fascism. Mussolini showed us this back in the 1920s. He got a bunch of young people together, and Mr. Trudeau, the new Prime Minister, has just done this again. He's got a bunch of young people that he's hired. Mussolini did the same thing. He called them black shirts. What were the black shirts' jobs? To subvert democracy. And they were sent out as spies among the public. And if people in the public were speaking badly against Mussolini, they got arrested. They were pulled off the street by the police, and very often they disappeared. I'm not sure if we're going to have that in Canada. I have been charged before. I interrupted a drug deal on Hells Angels territory. I don't know if you guys have the Hells Angels where you live. In Canada, you have to be careful. You're not actually supposed to say Hells Angels here. When I ended up in court, the lawyers representing the Crown refused to say Hells Angels. They would not say the words Hells Angels. They refused. This woman lawyer for the Crown, she just kept calling it this group over and over again, this group. She wouldn't say Hells Angels. Anyway, I did. I got beaten with a crowbar, and I got stabbed. One day later, 2 Vancouver City police officers came to see me. They asked if I interrupted a drug deal. They had the address. It was on the street. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. It's a little bit past 3 o'clock in the morning. I said, yeah, I interrupted a drug deal. Jesus, look at me. You know, I showed them my bruises. I showed them the hole in my arm from the stabbing. So what did they do? They handcuffed me and put me in jail. I was charged. I was charged for assaulting them. I'm the one got beaten up with a crowbar and stabbed. So the judge, his name is William Kitchen, when he heard me, because they let me out, right, and I have to get a lawyer. My lawyer was also a Vancouver City police officer. He was a Vancouver City police officer for 8 years. This is how fascism works. This is the most wonderful country. You ask Beverly Ann McLaughlin. It is the greatest country in the world. Has the greatest system of justice, which is absolute crap. She didn't study law. She studied philosophy for 6 years. Somehow became the top judge in Canada by a guy named Brian Mulroney, former Prime Minister from Quebec, trained under Napoleonic Code, gave us the GST, which is one of the biggest financial scams in the world. I'm going to get onto that one in another episode. However, anyway, I go to court, and I claim that I'm innocent, and the proceedings happen. You know, my lawyer objects to what the Crown's lawyer, a woman who's prosecuting me, and the judge, he wouldn't sustain any of my lawyers. He only sustained one. My lawyer complained many times to the judge, but every time the woman lawyer complained about my lawyer, the judge sustained every objection she made, without exception. He kept smiling at her. They keep smiling at each other like they have met. They have had conversations before we got there. My lawyer was going crazy, and he's a cop. He couldn't believe these things were happening in a Canadian courtroom. As Beverly Ann McLaughlin will say, the greatest system of justice in the world. It is not. It is rife with criminal activity. It is stacked against justice. Justin Trudeau says we are rule of law. We don't have rule of law in this country. It's a warning for the rest of the world. There's 45,000 unheard cases. The government says we're not hearing them. The judges are told not to hear them because Canada can't afford the payout. Canada is encouraging criminal activity. Canada is encouraging beating down and beating up the public who have been abused by the Crown, the agents of the Crown, or the employees of the Crown. Mr. Trudeau changed this in 1981. Before 1981, we had a thing called the English Common Law. It was under the British North America Act. We could prosecute the Crown and find justice. After 1981, it was banned. You can't prosecute the Crown. Beverly Ann McLaughlin will tell you this. You can't prosecute the prosecutor. The prosecutor is the Crown. So when the police arrest you, you are considered guilty until proven innocent in this country. That's fascism through and through. A man named Terry LaLiberté, and he's a famous lawyer in this province, where I'm in British Columbia, Canada. He said the presumption is guilt over innocence in criminal courts in Canada. It is guilt over innocence. And I know this myself. Judge Kitchen sentenced me to 25 years of prison time with no chance of parole, unless I wanted to change my plea to guilty. I refused to do it. He was furious. He looked like Nikita Khrushchev. He had 2 fists. He pounded them on his desk. You will! You will! You will! My lawyer, the cop, jumped to his feet, and he punched his fist in the air, and he said, no! So now, the judge and my lawyer get into a shouting match. It was wonderful. It's too bad in Canada you're not allowed to film these things or record any of it. It is not permitted. It's a fascist state. There's rugby boys standing against the wall. They got wrists big around your neck. And they're coming for me because I'm going to prison for 25 years with no chance of parole because I interrupted a drug deal on Hells Angels territory. That's Canada. How much money is it here? In this city, it is $7 billion. and it all gets deposited in just one bank. And a woman in the United States, Catherine Fitz, she pointed out the bank's name. She delivered this information to the government of Canada for prosecution. The government of Canada said, no. So they let them go because the government of Canada actually gets the money. I don't know if you know how this works with bank deposits. That money actually belongs to the government of Canada, and it's $7 billion a year. And that's just this city. There's also the city of Toronto, which is Canada's largest city, which has drug industry like crazy there. They have a big problem with their police department. We have a big problem with our police department, and Montreal, the city of Montreal, has the most dangerous police force as a city police force possibly in the world. They are known to be extremely violent men and women. Don't forget the women. So I walked out of the courtroom. My lawyer, he couldn't believe this. He just couldn't believe it. So he stands up. My lawyer stands up. The judge is looking at me like I'm going to change my plea to guilty for being beaten up by a crowbar and stabbed. And I had to apologize. The judge said I had to apologize to these 3 people that beat me up. I have to apologize. This is madness. But he was politically appointed. He answers no questions from anybody. He is in the ivory tower, they call it here. And we are riffraff. And he probably, I expect, Judge Kitchen used to be a police officer. You can't get backgrounds of judges here. We don't allow it. Canada doesn't allow it. I would love it, but Canada doesn't allow it. I gotta get going. I gotta hurry this up. Anyway, it's my warning. Canada's a fascist state, fascist country. Prime Minister does beat up women. He does grope women. He's a feminist. He's really big on feminists, but I think he's using it as a wonderful, it's the, what do they call it? The best offense is it's a preemptive strike, actually. But anyway, he refuses to apologize. He refuses to step down. He's above the law, and the Prime Ministers of Canada are above the law. You couldn't possibly charge any Prime Minister in this country. In England, they have to resign. They have to step down. They do jail time. In America, it's probably the same. They impeach them when they catch them lying and breaking the law. In Canada, there's no such thing. We don't do that. I don't think we have ever done it in our history. It's a great country. It's a beautiful place, but it's extremely badly run. Extremely badly run. And the police are, here we call it the Millionaires Club. If you've become a police officer, you're a millionaire. They start at, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police start at $75,000 a year. So I expect I know some municipalities, I'm living in New Westminster, they're the highest paid police officers in Canada for municipal. But the SkyTrain police get even more money than they do. It's probably, you know, if you're there for a year or two, you're probably at $125,000 or $155,000 a year. Plus, yeah, you got a gun. And you can drink and drive. That's always good. Well, it's not good, but we do it. I listen to the cops talk. They're at the same coffee shop I'm at. I'm at 5:30. It's 4:30 right now, a.m. At 5:30, they're at 5 o'clock actually. They're at the coffee shop down the street. At 5:30, I'm sitting beside them. I listen to them talk. Some of them just got in the car. I mean, they're about to get off their shift. But the new people coming on, they talk about this like, well, I hope they haven't been drinking again. Some of them are rugby players, and they can drink beer. I lived with a rugby girl for a short time. They can drink beer. And chicken wings, I've never seen, I mean, I don't get this chicken wing thing. I don't understand it. But anyway, I'll certainly put the pounds on you if you want to gain weight. Eat some chicken wings. That'll do it for you. Anyway, Canada's a corrupt country. We do not have justice here. Just to get back to my court, I was charged, convicted, and sentenced to 25 years. No chance of parole. I walked out of the courtroom. My lawyer, a man, turned to me and he said, "Follow me." He grabbed his stuff. He started walking out of the courtroom. Judge Kitchen is watching him walk. I stood up and I walked out behind him. The rugby boys, they're doing this. They're like, do we tackle them? The problem is, my lawyer is also a cop. Not only that, he's a rugby player. I thought, this is going to be good. I got 2 rugby boys coming from that side. My lawyer's a rugby boy. Now there's 2 of us, and them. Now they've got guns though, and so it's not going to be a fair fight. Cops like to fight you if they got a gun. They'll fight you if they got a gun. If they don't have a gun, they may not fight you. There's a famous case in Toronto of a guy who got beaten up by a cop when he was handcuffed. So the guy who got beaten up was innocent. So he challenged the cop to a street fight. Take off your gun belt, bring all the cop cars if you want, but you and I are going to duke it out. The cop wouldn't show up. That's how it is. You got a gun, you can fight. What's that famous quote? Sean Connery was in a film about bootlegging, and he said he had a gun, and the guy who wanted to fight him had a knife, and he said, "It's just like a whop to bring a knife to a gunfight." I don't know what whop means. In fact, it used to be a little refrain in rock and roll, is a doo-wop, doo-wah, something like that. Anyway, I've got to get running. I'm running out of time. Anyway, sorry to ramble on and be so direct, except you have to understand that Canada is a fascist state, a fascist country. The President of the United States is now bringing us to the World Trade Organization with a complaint, and I suspect his lawyers are completely correct, because in Canada, we don't have law. We do not have rule of law. Thank you for listening. I want to come back again and talk about how the spiritual world influences us and what they're sort of up to. I try to work this out, like, what are these assholes really trying to do? You know, all this one world and one globe thing, forget about it. It's not supposed to be one world and one globe. You know, the nations are all themselves, whatever attributes they have, and they should remain significant to themselves. They should remain as they are, rather than everybody getting together to sing Kumbaya. Bye, everybody. Have fun. See you later. Bye.